Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks a lot for joining this session on enhancing privacy and security through technological innovation. So we're going to be looking in this session at the innovation dimension of privacy, and we have tried to assemble a very diverse panel representing various interests in this aspect of privacy innovation. So my name is Pierre Chastanet. I'm from the European Commission. I work in DG CNECT in the Trust and Security team. We're the team that is in charge of cybersecurity policy in the Commission. We implement the part of the EU cybersecurity strategy that is pertaining to cybersecurity. We have the NIS directive, Network and Information Security Directive, as well as the review of the e-privacy directive. You may have seen some of my colleagues in other sessions at CPDP talking about that. I will be accompanied with Elisabeth Leeuw from IdTopIQ, who will be the chair of this panel. So briefly introducing the member of the panel, and before they each speak, I will say a few words more about them. So on the panel, beside Elisabeth Leeuw, we have Calum MacLeod from BehavioSec. We have David Martin from BEUC. We have Carmela Troncoso from IMDEA in Spain, Ben Williams from Eyeo, and Rita Zágoni from the Hungarian Civil Liberties Union. So thanks a lot to all of them for accepting to join me in this panel. So let's get started. I will try to go through a few slides as a scene setter for the panel. So from the Commission point of view, we see privacy as a very dynamic field in Europe from both an industrial and civil society point of view. We now have a pretty good framework that will ensure legal certainty in Europe with respect to data protection. The General Data Protection Regulation reached a political agreement at the end of 2015, and we hope for adoption towards spring this year. However, the actors in the privacy space have not waited for legislation to stabilize, and a lot of activities happen in this field from the industry, from civil society. So when people actually go online, be they private actors or individual actors, citizens, or enterprises, well, people feel being tracked. So before they even click on anything, their data is actually populated to all sorts of different places, and companies are scrutinizing what they are going to be doing on the web. So there is emergence of all sorts of actors in this ecosystem of online tracking. However, if you look at the actual revenue that this is generating, we see that there are very few actors that are benefiting and capturing this market. So if you take the top three companies in this space, they are capturing 40% of the total revenue generated in this area. At the same time, we see different sort of innovation happening. One sort of technology that has emerged that is taking up very rapidly at the demand of consumer is ad blocking technology. We see enormous take-up of such technologies across European countries. So which shows that there is demand from the consumer side to have technology to protect their fundamental rights for privacy. At the same time, there is a legitimate need from advertising companies to place relevant advertisement and also to be able to tap to the consumer market and best offer them what they are looking for. So we see equal innovation on other part of the ecosystem where people are trying to look at how they can best offer products and services across multiple devices that people are using in their daily life. So what we see is that this is actually just the beginning of it. There are a number of major trends in technological innovation that will fundamentally reshape the privacy space outside of the legal aspects. So the privacy technology is one of the most promising area, and it will be influenced in the coming years by major trend in digital technology evolution. So one of them is the big data, is the emergence of massive analytics capacity. The second one is artificial intelligence capacities, and the third one is smart appliances and the Internet of Things. So I will quickly go through these three. So big data will start offering unprecedented capacities in processing people's data. If we look at the current processing capabilities, they are able to do some degree of market segmentation and get in touch with customers according to a certain market segmentation. But the new offering of analytics offered by big data will enable to go at a much lower level of granularity and enabling to do predictive analysis on individual people rather than groups or cohort of people. The second one is artificial intelligence, which is emerging in the online space, in particular for advertisement. And machine learning will fundamentally change as well the way advertisement is being placed to citizens. So again, much more adaptive, much more personalized in the online space. The final big trend that we see is smart appliances. So the Internet of Things, where you will start seeing the population of screens. So this will shift the paradigm of the three screens that we know today with the mobile phone, the TV, and the laptop, where screens will start being populated in the cars, on home appliances, etc., and with the opportunity to populate advertisement to access consumer behaviors from these different devices. Of course, with the paradigm to find on protecting the privacy, so if somebody install an ad blocker, well, will this start blocking your washing machine? So that offers very different perspective on the emergence of what people will start seeing in the online space, but also in the physical life because of the pervasiveness of digital technologies. So I will stop here. That was just a scene setter, and I will first welcome our chair, Elisabeth de Leeuw. Elisabeth is working for IdTopIQ. She's a consultant in the field of IT security and identity architecture. She has over 30 years of experience in the public and financial sector. She has designed a model for multi-dimensional access control, and she's currently looking for investors to actually implement this model in concrete tools. She joined the program committee at this international workshop information security in Australia, and she won the BEUC Security Award with her thesis on biometrics in national identity management. Thank you. Elisabeth, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Can you please?
Sure.
The microphone works? Yes, I think so. And then a slideshow. Yeah, okay. Yeah, to the left. Yeah, that one. And then from start. Yeah, okay. Well, we can go through that. Can I have the thingy?
Sorry.
And then this is, yeah, okay. You know all that, so we can skip. These are the panel numbers, you know that already. And now I cannot read my own text, so I have to look here. What I'm interested in, and what I would like, among other things, to discuss in this panel is the developments we are facing on a high level. So whether it's about advertising or it's about espionage, it doesn't matter. On a high level, there are a number of tendencies in technology, in vulnerabilities, in values we have in society, sort of greeds we are developing, and also the dilemmas we face regarding these developments. I will go into that. We have, of course, it was already mentioned, big data analytics. We have also things like cloud collaboration, also not only where organizations meet, but also where the data of different organizations meet. So big data can become even more bigger data, so to say. We have intelligent agents walking around these big data and combining sets of data and creating new information and new actions based on these data. We have the Internet of Things, where in the end, theoretically, everything can be connected. So everybody, everything has data, even the chair you're sitting on. We have things like open data. That sounds innocent, but on the basis of open data, I think 80% of open source intelligence, 80% of intelligence is done. So that's very important. It looks innocent, but it can be a bit more than that. And also we have the social media, where we willingly expose all our personal information, at least many of us do. And because of the principle of data analytics, it is in my opinion, in the end, all data or almost all data will be personal, identifiable data. I cannot prove that. I'm not a mathematician. But what I know is that when you combine two sets of data and you analyze these data, then the analytics will generate new data. So two components that are anonymous in itself, when you combine them, they can become personal data. So that's, I think, in data analytics is a very dangerous thing, also in terms of legislation. How do you protect the privacy in the field of data analytics? Well, in terms of values, what kind of society do we live in? There's a tendency towards data is the new gold and identity is the new money. So people will try and find the money. They will follow the money. So we try to make policies, and we are trying to protect democratic society and privacy, etc. But there are also other forces. It's force of money, about finding money, making money, and that's a force in itself. So when we look at ourselves, I think we have some new greeds or emerging greeds, or greeds that are becoming stronger. We have greed to share, and the greed to share is empowered by social media, for example. We have greed to know. The public sector wants to know everything about us, but also the private sector, for example, on behalf of advertisements, they want to know everything about us. And we have agreed to hoard. What I mean by that is that when you, for example, when applications are developed, for example, for public transport, then lots of data are stored, whereas these data are not needed. When you buy a public transport ticket, all they have to know is where do you come from, where you want to go, and you have to pay for it, of course. But now names, addresses, birth dates, etc. are stored from the passengers. So that's really intrusive. Now we come to some major dilemmas. The first dilemma is the dilemma between need to know and need to share. That's a very important dilemma when it comes to public safety and security. We saw that with the attacks from 9/11. Before the attacks, data between intelligence services in the US were not shared, whereas afterwards they were shared, and that caused WikiLeaks to happen. Now you can say I'm happy that WikiLeaks happened. But nevertheless, it's a dilemma, because definitely the intelligence services didn't want WikiLeaks to happen. Following that, there's some sort of dilemma between safety and privacy, where some parties says, okay, we need to pay in terms of privacy in order to create security and safety. I think that's not always true, because when you when you do not protect privacy, then you cannot protect safety. But that's a question, of course, to answer also by the panel. The last thing is to know or to unknow. That has to do with the storage of all the huge amount of data. And there's Mr. William Benny who worked for the NSA, and he says in the end all the storage of those amounts of data will not help to protect safety and security. It will inundate analysis, so we cannot find the needle in the haystack anymore. So the main challenges, in my opinion, are the principle of purpose is at the moment obsolete, because it's very difficult to say what the purpose of an action is, because when you start doing analytics and you do not know what the outcome is, then can you say it's purposeful? It's very difficult to decide. Also to overcome all the dilemmas and the current situation, we need some paradigm shift. So we need to think about fundamentally different types of solutions, and we should think in terms of mimicry, data reduction, contractions, sealing of data, encapsulations, and even much more. And I hope the panel can help here. So, well, that's it.
Okay, thanks a lot, Elisabeth, for this introduction. I think you have said very well the big principles that prevail in this space. Let's move now to our next panelist. That's Ben Williams from Eyeo. Ben is communication and operational manager at Eyeo. Eyeo is probably one of these companies that you have never heard of, but maybe a lot of you in the room are using their technology. Eyeo is the company that has developed this open source software that millions of people are using in their everyday life. Their solution include the famous AdBlock Plus add-on for web browser. This is one of the most popular add-on in web browser with over 300 million downloads. So Ben is going to present this. We think that this is a very good illustration of the innovation capacity that happen in Europe. Ben.
Pierre, thank you very much. Maybe we could get my presentation up there.
The pointer?
Yeah, if you don't mind. So hey guys, my name is Ben, as Pierre told you, and Pierre told me I had 8 minutes, so I'm going to start the timer right now, and you can call me on it if it beeps. So yeah, as he said, I am from AdBlock Plus. You may have heard of AdBlock Plus. You may have heard of other content blocking tools. You may be wondering why I chose to stand. It's not because our panel is cozy. I like that part. It's because I'm a short man, and it's the only time I ever feel tall, when I can look across the room like this. But no, in all seriousness, we actually have 500 million downloads. We are a decade old, and we just passed the 500 million mark last week. So we're very proud of that. We're very happy about that. And what I want to talk to you about today is essentially user empowerment, because I don't think we can do a lot of the things that the people on the stage are going to talk about. I think they're the pros at that. But what we can do is we can give you and everybody you know something to put on your browser or something to put on your device that will allow you to take control of your ad experience, that will allow you to take control of your privacy experience and your security experience. So yeah, I mean, it's all about user empowerment. Oh, so yeah, so just first, I kind of like to start with dessert. Boom, 200 million people use ad blockers. We're just one of the ad blockers out there. So, we have 500 million downloads and quite a few users out there, but there are several other ad blockers and content blockers out there. This number was provided in 2015 by Adobe and by PageFair, so there's every reason to think that this number is only going to increase. Why? Because we, since 2013 alone, have been averaging 3 million downloads per week. So it's really clocking right now in the ad blocking sphere. Bit about us, couldn't help it. I don't get a chance to plug much. I don't get a chance to advertise very much, so this is AdBlock Plus. We are open source. We're supported by over 200 volunteers, including a very large open source community. We have 500 million downloads, as I mentioned before. We're the most popular browser extension worldwide, the most popular browser extension ever. We block tracking, or we allow you to block tracking, malvertising. Those are malware-laden ads, nasty stuff. Facebook trackers, the ubiquitous like button you see everywhere. I'm sure you all know that's not really so you can tell your friends you like something. That's so Facebook can see what you like and then sell that to advertisers. We block annoying ads, but getting to what Pierre was talking about a second ago, in 2011 we changed our focus to try to not block all the things because we believe that there can be better ads out there. And I won't get into that too much today. If there are any questions, happy to go into those. But essentially, we set up criteria with our users for better ads. And if ads promise to abide by those criteria, they can be whitelisted. Users can still turn the feature off, but what we're trying to do is support publishers. Finally, we're available for all major browsers, Android, iOS. You get the picture. But stepping back just a bit, why would you want to block an ad? Well, those are essentially in the user feedback that we've had over the years, in the surveys we've conducted, in the studies we've done, the studies we've seen. It's essentially those 4 reasons, or 4.5, if you would. Annoyance, intrusiveness. That just means people don't like things to get in the way of what they came to a website to do. And let's face it, no one came to a website to look at the ads. Number 2, privacy. That's kind of why we're here today. We allow you to add subscriptions that will basically put a block on trackers and tracking scripts out on the web. Security. I mentioned malvertising before. Malvertising increased 3-fold from 2013 on to 2014. That means you can mouse over an ad, and without you doing anything, your computer is infected. So if you're blocking the ads, or the majority of the ads, there's a very good chance that you won't get malvertising or be a victim of malvertising. And finally, page load speeds and data savings. This is more for your mobile devices. We're kind of new on mobile. But of course, you have to download ads. So when you're out on your 3G or 4G signal, you're downloading the ads. This is costing you data, and it's costing you time. A little bit about how content is blocked. Most ad blockers work this way. There's an open source community. There are probably thousands of people who contribute to that, if not hundreds of thousands. And they find things online that they think are blockable. And then they categorize them by what they are. So they categorize them by ads. They categorize them by trackers. They categorize them by malware domains. And they make it into a list. And then we, as an ad blocker or a content blocker, there's some more up there, uBlock, AdBlock Pro, use that to give users the ability to block whatever that list is for. So there are about 200 ad blockers. Most of us are open source. And this is kind of how it works. So this is what we're talking about when we're talking about the website. You see the red bits? Red means bad here. So these are the bits you may want to block. The filter lists are going to allow you to do that. What the content blocker allows you to do is simply to manage the filter lists. Otherwise, when you would use an ad blocker, one thing that would happen, for instance, is the page would look all funky. It would render in a funny way because there'd be spaces where the ads used to be. So the ad blocker essentially manages that for you. And I think this is what the feeling is when you first download an ad blocker. I don't know if I'm an American. We liked He-Man. Do you guys like He-Man? Yeah, you know He-Man? Okay. I'm aging myself a little bit here, guys. So anyway, He-Man. So when he became He-Man, he'd always grab the sword and he'd say, "I have the power." When I first used ad blockers, it was like this. I didn't actually use AdBlock Plus first, but when I did that, I was like, holy shit, I can go and get the web that I want. And that's the point, because we think that you should have the web that you want. It's all about user empowerment, and we really believe that it's a user-determined internet. So that's it. I've got a minute left, so I'll just use a little bit of it because I really do want to give you guys a chance to ask questions. Ad blocking is really booming right now, as I said at the beginning, and we see ad blocking, and I think clearly ad blocking is a statement of mass user dissatisfaction. When 200 million people online say, we want to download an ad blocker, what they're really saying is, we don't like the status quo, we demand better. So we can demand that better ads can be out there, but if we do that, we have to do that with the user and on the user's own terms. So this is the free, wonderful way that the internet has always worked. It's always been free. It's been a wild west out there, and it needs regulation. Corporations, businesses like ours, we need the government to tell us, when we're going too far. That's definitely important. But we have to keep in mind that the internet is for users and by users and determined by users. And that's what content blockers allow you to do. So with that, I will yield the final 3 seconds of my time, and thank you so much.
Okay, thanks a lot, Ben, for this presentation. We're going to move to another industrial perspective, but showing as well how dynamic the space is in privacy innovation in Europe. Our next speaker is Calum MacLeod. Calum is Business Development Director at BehavioSec. BehavioSec is a Swedish company. Calum has been involved in the IT industry for more than 40 years. He was involved in the introduction of several innovative identity technologies and development, and primarily focused on identity security. So Calum will present us the work at BehavioSec, and again, to show how innovation is booming in Europe in privacy technology.
Thank you very much. So I've set the timer going as well. So let me just give you a quick idea. Today there are over 50 banks in Europe, with another 20 coming online this year, that are looking at your behavior when you do internet banking or mobile banking. You probably don't know this because legally they're not required to tell you that they're taking your behavior. Some of them choose out of politeness to tell you. Some of them put it in the small print of their terms and conditions. And why do they do this? Because there is one of the big challenges today that the industry is facing, the internet industry is facing, let's say the banking industry is facing, is a very competitive landscape. The whole payment sector is wide open. Anybody effectively today can offer financial service to anybody online. The fintech space today is absolutely exploding in terms of the number of companies that are coming with innovative solutions. It's an extremely challenging business because there is the tension between the need to secure the customer versus the need to provide the customer with a good user experience. Everybody wants a good user experience, which is one of the reasons why, for example, the concept of SMS or mobile authentication or a token on these devices, nobody wants it. They want a good user experience. So how do I now, as a service provider, provide you with a level of security that guarantees that your identity is protected, but at the same time provide you the level of freedom that you want, or in other cases, comply with the legislation? If you look at it from a privacy standpoint or a technology standpoint, the technology that's available today can be extremely effective in identifying that you are who you claim to be. But there's a very fine line between collecting that information and maybe invading your privacy. So I think there's a whole discussion to be had about how important is your privacy to you versus how important is your bank account. Would you rather that your privacy is secure but your bank account is empty? Or would you rather that your bank account has your money but somebody else has access to your private information? It's an ongoing debate because every time we talk to any organization, they're dealing with European data protection legislation, they're dealing with European Banking Association guidelines or payment service directives. They're dealing with the need to comply with data protection legislation. So if you take, for example, in Germany, it is extremely difficult to be able to use biometrics, which is becoming more and more popular in the industry as a way of authenticating people, because profiling is something that's extremely important. I can profile you based on your fingerprint, based on your iris, based on your face, based on your voice, in terms of being able to, are you man or woman, what is your race, many other things. So that I have to be extremely careful with. So there is this tension going on about the fact that technology might exist, but that does not necessarily mean that that technology should be freely used all over the place. There's another major challenge that we face in the industry, and that's education. Education is, how do you educate? This has been something that has been going on since day one of the internet. How do I educate users? If you take, for example, one of the organizations we deal with have 3.5 billion users worldwide. What percentage of that population do you imagine are even IT literate? They're using mobiles, they're using browsers, they're using PCs, but the vast majority are not able to understand the concepts of IT security. So you're having to try and protect these people in spite of the fact that you are completely unable to educate them about the dangers of the internet, or even get them to act in a sensible way, in what we would consider to be a sensible way. You also have to look at the industry. For example, how many people out there have the economic means to go out there and buy an iPhone? Well, not everybody does. So now do I start to segment society into the groups that have the financial means to be able to afford the technology that makes them secure? Does that mean that certain parts of society that do not have the money should not be secure because they don't have the means to do it? I can't do that. I have to provide the ability to do all-inclusive. And one of the reasons why we're doing what we call behavioral biometrics, and I'm trying to keep a track of my time here. Once I start talking, I'm not very good at stopping. But one of the things about behavioral biometrics is extremely, it applies to everybody. Because what does it do? It actually, what is really unique about behavioral biometrics, it is that it has a level equivalent to fingerprint or any other form of physical biometric, but it's learning who you are based on the way you behave. What makes that unique is that it is impossible for me to profile you in terms of what your race is, what your sex is, whatever anything is about you. I can only profile you as being a good typist or a bad typist effectively, which doesn't tell me a whole lot. So the idea of what you start to see happen in the industry is a search going on to try and find the way that I can combine, first of all, providing people with a level of security that at the same time makes it universally available, that does not profile individuals, okay, and at the same time does not allow me to identify any personal identifiable information. And one of the things what makes behavioral biometrics extremely unique is that it actually meets all those criteria, that it is universal, it's device independent, and I cannot identify anything about you. So you start to see this is one of the reasons why in the financial services sector, this is now growing extremely fast, because they realize that this is a way for them to provide a level of security and protection to their clients without compromising their client's identity. So this is an area that we're obviously working in. We start to see that it's becoming more and more prevalent in the industry. We start to see that it's starting to move into many different sectors. You can imagine, for example, so I'll give you a very interesting example, dating sites. Now, one of the big problems that dating sites have is that they have people that are, what do they call them? You know, the people that kind of keep chasing the same person, you know, they're stalkers. Okay, stalkers. Yeah, good. Okay, so I just seen if you're awake, this is great. So stalkers. Now imagine I'm a stalker on a dating site. Once I've provided an identity and I've been reported because of misuse of the dating site, and then I'm removed from the dating site, but I come back in with a different identity, okay? How do I, as a service provider, protect my other client from me as a stalker? Very, very difficult if I'm switching identities. By behavior, what I can't switch is my behavior. And because I'm not aware that my behavior is being collected, although I've taken multiple identities, my identity is identified immediately because my behavior on a keyboard or on a mouse or whatever is always the same. We see it being used, for example, in education, because more and more educational institutes are going to use online exams. Well, how do I know that the student is not taking the exam for another student? Exactly the same principle. I can identify their behavior. So those are some of the things that are happening now that out there. For all I know, every one of you in here, if you're in Europe, may be having your behavioral profile taken by your bank as you do online or web banking. You wouldn't know, yeah? But what the bank can do with that is they can identify in real time if, for example, a man in the middle comes in and tries to change either your mobile number or change the transfer account, they'll be able to tell immediately that it's not you and somebody else. So that just, things are happening in the background that are doing great things, that's it.
Okay, thanks, Calum, for providing a different industry perspective on another kind of technology development that is taking place, and also illustrating what Elisabeth was presenting at the beginning, this sort of dilemma that need to take place between security and privacy, depending on the kind of application you're looking for online. Our next speaker is David Martin. David is a senior legal officer at BEUC. BEUC is the European Consumer Organization. They represent 41 independent national consumer associations from 31 different European countries. David is actually part of the digital team within BEUC, where he focuses on privacy, data protection and competition. So he has been working in the digital sphere since 2006 and is a lawyer of background. So David, floor is yours.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to say, just to keep things in perspective, that when we're talking about privacy, we're talking about self-determination and freedom. We're talking about the ability to have control over your own life. And we don't have to forget that. We don't have to forget that we're talking about a fundamental right protected by the European Charter of Fundamental Rights, among other things. In terms of personal data issues, these issues have risen in complexity and scale over the last few years, and will keep on rising when we talk about big data analytics. Now I was hearing about behavioral metrics, which can sounds Chinese to a normal consumer, I would say, with all my respect to the Chinese, of course. And connected devices, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, thanks. Machine learning, and privacy and security challenges are huge, and they are growing exponentially. And these challenges are very complex and in many cases largely unknown to normal consumers, and or at least very difficult to understand. We as consumers are basically facing an invisible risk. And even if I'm aware of what's going on, or partly aware of what could be going on, there's often, because of the way the whole system works, I cannot do much about it actually. We are in the business models that we have now are not privacy friendly, and they are largely take it or leave it models. Either you play the game or you're out, basically. So what I'm trying to say is that right now we have an endemic imbalance between the power and information that the industry has on one side, and what consumers know, what consumers can do on the other side. And this needs to be addressed because right now it's about getting as much data as you can, knowing as much as you can about an individual. We don't know what this information is being used for, how it's being collected, who is collecting it or what is collecting it, where are the limits, are these limits being respected? I think that these are all fair questions that we need to take into account when we're talking about these issues from a consumer perspective. Of course, there's a whole issue of security as well. We hear as well that there's more and more data, and that data is actually becoming more and more sensitive as well. If you start talking about wearables, medical devices, health data, and at the same time, you read the news and you see data breaches in the NHS in the UK. You see data breaches in the US government, and Sony Pictures. I mean, all these. If all these big corporations cannot keep the data secure and public bodies cannot keep their data secure, how can I expect that a mobile phone app by a startup somewhere, I don't know, in the Netherlands is gonna be able to keep my medical data if they are into that field secure. It's also some questions from a consumer perspective which are worrying. I think that the answer to all these challenges has to come from very different perspectives. It's not only about regulation, though regulation is key. It's there to provide the baseline for the digital economy to develop in a way that respects our fundamental rights and values. User empowerment, making sure that users are aware of what's going on, education, that's also very important. But you cannot rely on consumers being experts on everything. We have to be experts on financial services, on medical services, on technology. It's very difficult to keep up with all that. And technology actually is a key element to face all these challenges. And it's key for user empowerment. And I was listening to Ben's presentation, and it was very, very interesting. And he actually said many of the things that I also think, and I was going to mention, to be honest. In terms of technology, I wanted to focus on two things, apart from the great invisibility pills that we got in the conference bag, which I've tried and they're great, by the way. One thing is do not track, and this whole initiative that it's been going on for a long time, but it looks like it's going almost, or went almost nowhere now. And it's linked to ad blockers as well. So do not track and ad blockers. The do not track issue goes at the very heart of the problem, in our opinion. Consumers are tracked constantly, online and now offline as well. There's almost no offline anymore if you think about wearables and connected devices and the Internet of Things. I was reading a study the other day that says that 90% of the top 1 million websites collect data about the users and share it with third parties, basically without telling them much about it. Google tracks you in 78% of the web. Facebook tracks you even when you're not logged in, just through those like buttons. You can say, hey, it's Google, it's Facebook. Consumers should know by now how these things work, you know? You get free services and they kind of make money of your data. First of all, it's not like that, because even if they know, they have no alternative. And second, there's much more than this if you start digging into it. Especially if you look at the world of online advertising, the so-called engine of the digital economy. As an example of what I'm talking about in terms of the digital of online advertising, I looked at two companies. One is called Axiom, and the other one's called Crux Digital. And I dare you to go out there and ask people on the street if they know who these people are, who these companies are. They are basically data brokers, and I went into the Axiom website, and the first thing I saw there was in big letters something that said, people data is here. And then they advertise themselves as knowing individuals across every device. You start reading about them, and they talk about personalized experience to the right people, the right way, on the right screen, at the right time. They unify, analyze, and activate consumer data signatures, whatever that is, across every device. And they mention desktop, mobile, tablet, set-top, across every channel, display, social, search, video, and all of this in real time. 2 billion devices worldwide. Then you look at Axiom. They say they have information about 700 million consumers worldwide, over 3,000 data segments. Who are these people? What do they know about me? How did they get this information? What are they using it for? And more importantly, how can I stop it? These are, again, all fair questions. So we need do not track solutions that can be easily used by the consumers and which are at their reach, because you cannot expect consumers to, for example, go and fiddle with the settings of the browser all the time. Most consumers don't even do it. I'm happy to hear that more and more consumers are actually downloading tools like AdBlock Plus, but we need more of that. We need privacy by design and by default in these products. And for this to happen, we need also political will and backing from the industry. It's not good to see, for example, that the FTC in the US is saying that they're not going to go after companies that do not respect the do not track requests. It's not good to see companies like Google kicking out other apps like Disconnect from the Play Store because they say that they interact with other apps in the system. I mean, this is showing that political will and that will from the industry to change their practices is not there. And going to ad blockers, I think that it's been very well said why consumers are turning to this. It's because they're getting fed up with the status quo. And they're looking for a better online experience. They want less intrusion, they want faster loading times, less data consumption. And the second reason, because they are increasingly privacy aware and they're looking for ways to protect themselves. So there is an increasing demand for privacy-friendly technologies. Consumers are trying to vote with their feet, but it's not easy because the prevailing business model is not helping them at all. And the ad blockers are great, but they're not the answer to everything, in our opinion. Because, okay, they work on browsers, mobile browsers, but what about apps? Am I going to need an ad blocker for my smart TV soon, or for my smart fridge? What about native advertising, which is embedded in the content? How are we going to be blocking all that? The problem are not the ads per se, in fact. It's what is happening behind. All that is happening behind is the problem. And ad blockers also raise questions, and whitelisting, how does that work? Transparency, are they also collecting data? Are they keeping that data? All those are questions that we have, and I would be very happy to have a chat afterwards to see how these things are working in practice. So just to finish, the message that is coming from consumers, in my opinion, is clear. They want more privacy. They do care about privacy. But you need to make sure that the industry as well is not focusing on circumventing these technologies, like circumventing ad blockers or strong arming consumers so that they say, hey, if you're using these tools, you're not going to access my content. They need to focus on developing attractive and sustainable privacy-friendly business models that respect fundamental rights.
Okay, thanks a lot, David, for this presentation. Indeed, we start seeing emerging technologies that start circumventing what people install in terms of tool and solution to protect themselves, like crypto technologies that, for instance, will make the advertisement or tracking invisible to the users until it's decrypted on the device itself, so in the web browser, so that any form of protection that people have installed will not prevent this sort of against the will of the people placement. So our next speaker is Rita Zágoni from the Hungarian Civil Liberties Union. Rita is the head of data protection program at the Hungarian Civil Liberties Union. She has a background in sociology, philosophy, and programming. Her work focuses on technological and legal aspects of protecting online privacy. She also regularly holds workshops for journalists and civil society activists on privacy and enhancing technologies. So Rita, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
I think you have a couple screenshots you wanted to show.
Yes, by the end only.
Okay,
So
okay.
it's-
Just let
you
me
can
know.
wait. Okay, thank you. So I'm here to talk a bit about the role of civil society in empowering users. We recently launched a campaign for private and secure communication at Eyeo. We created a website, right2hide.com, to provide information about the privacy risks of online activities and to present privacy-enhancing technologies to users in an accessible way. So what I'm going to talk about is why we started the project, what were the principles we had in mind when we designed the site, and by the end I'll show you a few screens of the site. So the basic problem we had in mind is to enable users to have control over their personal data and their personal life. like to frame it as an informational asymmetry which exists, which is created by the handling of personal data, either by states or companies, which creates a huge power imbalance between these actors. So in the ideal case, we would expect legal and policy answers to such a situation, but there are a couple of barriers to that. For example, lawmaking often lags much behind changes in technology. For example, we have now the cookie legislation in place, which is of course great, but there are a couple of more tracking technologies which is starting to understand, such as and starting to get familiar with, such as web beacons or page tags or tracking enabled by scripts. And in many cases, technology is faster to react, and technological solutions are usually developed faster than legal ones. Another reason for giving a technological answer to the situation is a lack of transparency which exists. Companies don't really have an interest in revealing what are their technical capacities and what they are able to do. And on the other side, there is a lack of awareness of users. We don't really expect from them to be able to be always aware, and we don't want them to be responsible. But still, in this case, awareness raising is important. So there is no adequate legal framework, then awareness raising and empowering users is the other side of the coin, and that's what we have to focus on. So general public is not always informed about the privacy risks of their online activities. So this is the situation which we thought that user empowerment is the answer for a part of the answer. So our goal with the website is partly to empower citizens so that they are more aware of the risks of their online activities, so that they can think more consciously about controlling their data, and they also have the means to do so. And there are a couple of principles we had to bear in mind when creating a website. For example, equality. So we decided to promote only free and mostly open source tools. There are already inequalities in access to information, access to education, and we believe that no one should pay for their privacy. Another principle is that even though political activists and journalists are even more exposed to the risks of their online presence, our target audience is the general public. And we wanted to make sure that explanations and tutorials presented on the site are accessible to a broad audience, and the whole project is not specifically targeted and not too technical. Third, security is a process, not a product. So it's not just about the tools, but also the whole mindset we would like to give the users. So we provide information based on which people can make informed decisions about choosing their tools. And the fourth principle is that knowledge sharing is not a top-down process. So we designed a website to enable comments and feedback, and try to enable building a community who can share their insights and who can contribute to the development of the site. So now would be the time to show a few screens. So we have a personal message from Edward Snowden, in the we have a small yes please, that's the next one. So we created animated videos around certain activities. So we try to follow the ways how users interact with technology. So we divided the topics into like online activities such as browsing or emailing, and we have videos and short explanations. And yes, this is the header of the site. And we also have a few screenshots. And we also have a set of tools and tips for each activity. And we wanted to create really easy to follow tutorials with screenshots, and also provided links where users can learn more about each activity. So this is our project, and we welcome any comment or feedbacks about it, either here or online. Thanks.
Okay, thanks a lot, Rita, for providing a very practical practice on how certain part of society are trying to protect themselves, especially when they are when their activities online expose them, including life-threatening in some cases. Our next speaker will be Carmela Troncoso from IMDEA. So Carmela received her PhD from University KU Leuven in 2011. She wrote her thesis on design and analysis method for privacy technologies. She was advised by the famous Professor Bart Prenel, a famous European cryptographer, and Professor Claudia Diaz. For her thesis, she earned an award from ERSIM, the European Research in Mathematics Association. In 2012, she joined Gradient, where she was the security and privacy technical lead. She worked on practical solutions with local and international companies at Gradient, and she earned a patent there on vehicle-to-cloud secure communication. In October last year, Carmela joined the IMDEA in Spain Software Institute as a researcher, where she's carrying on her academic career focused on privacy-related topics. So Carmela, the floor is yours. I think you have a presentation you wanted to show. I'll bring this up in a minute.
Yeah, thank you. So Pierre invited me here to give a view on what can be the future and how academic technology is looking at privacy and where we can go. And I wanted to present privacy-enhancing technologies as also business-enabling technologies, something that business can use to improve or provide new services with more privacy for users. And a first innovative way I wanted to show is a way of thinking about how we design. So the usual approach, and what we have seen here from David and also from Rita, and even from Brian, is that industry, when they design something, they say, okay, I want all data I can, and then because there is some kind of legislation or some limits, they have to stick to the data they can collect. But we can also go through what we call the privacy by design approach, which is, let's gonna think it in a different way. What is the data that we need for the purpose of the system? And then, well, sometimes just this data may not be enough for security reasons, as Calum was saying. Maybe sometimes just having little pieces of data is not enough. So in the end, we need a little bit more of data to ensure security, but we can actually get to the same services by collecting much less data than one initially thought. And one tool that allows us to do this in many ways are the so-called privacy-enhancing technologies. They give more privacy and sometimes even open new opportunities. So for instance, let's talk about privacy-preserving biometrics. As Calum was saying, biometrics are problematic in many places because once you provide a biometric, one of the things that we have is that they are for life. My fingerprint is here for the rest of my life. So once I give my biometric to a website, the template or that biometric itself make me linkable against databases. It can reveal some other information, like iris is known to reveal information about some diseases. They are not revocable. I cannot remove my finger and put a new one. And the system is not externalizable. I cannot send it to the cloud because I'm handling all of this personal data, all of these biometrics. But we have many technologies. I'm just going to put here one example that allow us to kind of mix this biometric with some cryptographic key or with some, I put there a key, it can be noise, for instance. in such a way that what we store in the database is not anymore a direct representation of my fingerprint, but some kind of transformation. And then the templates are not linkable anymore amongst databases. And in this case, we can develop this kind of technology in Germany, for instance. They do not reveal the biometric in the clear, and then no inference is possible from the information that is stored in the database. They are revocable, because if we change the key, my biometric can serve again and again and again, just by changing the key. And now I can externalize my service because I don't hold personal data anymore, and this data cannot be tracked among different instances. So again, by just using these kind of technologies, we can broaden the application of some technologies while respecting better the privacy of the users. Another example that I don't know what happens in the rest of Europe, but in Spain some months ago we had a big hassle after the terrorist attacks in Paris about the National Passenger Registry, which is this list that will keep the names of all the passengers of planes that go through Spain, and then this will be analyzed again and again and again in the search for terrorists. So how this works is like the law enforcement authorities will have this list of suspects. They will receive all of the list of the passengers of every plane that goes through Spain, and then check whether somebody in this list is in the list of suspects. This effectively means that everybody's going to be surveilled, that we're going to be by no reason just looked for to see where we go, where we not go, and just to be analyzed just in case it may be that some of us are terrorists. But actually we have, again, technology that will allow us to do this in a more privacy-preserving way. So we could, again, use some type of cryptography to, instead of revealing this list in the clear to law enforcement, give an encrypted version of it in such a way that they can mix the two encrypted versions, and if there is some coincidence, this will raise an alarm, and then they can ask for these exact names. So we have changed a blanket surveillance on everybody that is traveling to just reveal the name when you have a suspect. So we have, if the goal of the system, think again about the first slide I showed you, if the goal of the system is to identify when a suspect is traveling, we do not need the full list of passengers. We just need to know when this passenger is in the list. And by thinking in this way and applying this kind of new technologies, that we have many of them in development right now, and many of them are already mature to be actually used in commercial products, we can actually provide the same service with more privacy. And this can also enable other applications, like here is the passenger registry, but there are many cases now in business that some companies would like to share data among themselves, but they cannot because it is personal data, like find if I have the same client as you have, or compare incident reports. This is something that becomes very important. Incident reports, everybody wants to have the widest list of viruses or of attacks that is possible, but people are not willing to change to exchange their network histories between companies because this reveals a lot of information. But actually like this, we could compare, find coincidences, and make this list without having to reveal here is not the privacy, but the commercial secrets of companies. So again, we would be enable new services and still giving double privacy. Then we can also think about lately, everything is like pay as you drive, pay as you consume energy, pay as you use the internet, pay as you use the cloud. And the usual approach for this, I'm going to give the example of road charging, is that you send the data, in this case the road that you follow, to the service provider, and the service provider just looks what you have gone and then charge you for it. But actually, if we think about the service, in order to charge me, the only thing that the service provider needs to know is how much do they need to charge me. So what we can actually do, we could compute this amount locally and tell it to the service provider, and then you would say, yeah, but I mean, come on, you're gonna cheat. And you're always going to say that you're going to pay less. But we have this system, for instance, that allows us, for every little piece of road that we walk, we can compute how much money it would cost us, and then put this money in a vault, and send this vault to the service provider. The service provider cannot open the vault, and then later on, when we reveal the final fee, and we say, okay, this month I have to pay 50 euros, and then we give them a key that we produce, they can check with this key and the vaults that this fee that we are giving them actually corresponds to the pieces of road that I have traveled for. Again, we're enabling a system. We're enabling the same service. We can be pay as much as we drove in this case, but we could think about this for smart energy. There are many protocols to produce this on smart energy settings, or as I said, on pay-per-use in the cloud, that would allow us to actually pay-per-use, which is fair, is preferable for users probably, instead of paying just flat fees, and still keep all our privacy on what we do in the world. And we have a lot of magic like this. So we can do private searches. We can do private searches in databases, which can be very useful, for instance, for searching for patents. Every time a company searches for a patent in a patent repository, is revealing something about their intentions for the future. We could do private billing, as I just saw. We could do private comparison, private sharing of data. We can do private statistic computation. So for some of the services that we have seen before, for instance, for AdBlock Plus, if they want to collect the statistics or to collect, as they were saying, which are the whitelist, instead of asking users to give them in person, we can do this anonymously, or we can do this in a way that the collection of a statistic does not reveal which user had each preference. We have private electronic cash, and this you may of course know about Bitcoin. We can do private genomics computation, which is a great advance because it enables to send genomic computations to the cloud and save a lot of money without having to reveal all this very sensitive data to any service provider. And you may be wondering, why didn't I talk about anonymization, which is actually one of the main solutions used today by industry to actually process all of this data. They just anonymize the data, and then they are, once it's not personal data, they are allowed to do any computation over it. And well, as already Elisabeth said in the beginning, we're moving to this big data. We collect more and more data. We have these big silos of infinite data. Also, Calum was speaking about it. And it was shown in the past that maybe data is not that anonymous. So the Article 29 Working Party, which is the European institution in charge of European data protection legislation, gave this definition of anonymization. They say, okay, if we want data to be anonymous, we need it to produce these 3 criteria. The first one is that it should be not possible to single out. And this is kind of easy. And the thing is that when we have many data, the metadata, it's not the value of the data set, but the metadata, as for instance, the behavioral biometrics, are unique. The no linking data from one individual, we have been many examples in the past that even if data is anonymous, it is very easy to link individuals across databases. And it should be not possible to make inferences about individuals, but actually why are we making big data analysis for, if not for making inferences? So the only solution for this is actually to use more powerful tools that will reduce the usefulness of the data and where we reduce the risk of de-anonymization, but then this data would be only usable for very few use cases. So I hope I have seen, I have produced a view that privacy-enhancing technologies can be business-enabling technologies, and that also privacy is not always about user empowerment, about giving users. We also need industry to take over, as David said, and to produce on their side ways of giving us more privacy, because even if they tell us the opposite, it does not necessarily reduce security nor reduce their capability to give services.
Okay, thanks a lot, Carmela. It was a very interesting perspective on how you actually encompass privacy by design and really think of new mechanism to actually engineer system in a way that is respectful of privacy. I think we still have a couple minutes, and I would like to give the floor to the audience if you have any specific question that you would like to ask to our distinguished panelists. Now will be the time to do so. There are a couple mic. And just raise your hand. The lady is going to come to you with a mic. Come on, don't be shy. That's your chance.
Hi.
Here you go in the back.
Hi, Julia Mönig from the University of Passau in Germany. I have a question to Calum, because you said that your behavioral data you are not using them to make a profile, and you said they don't identify anyone, but how can you say that? Because my behavior is so unique, and that's why your technique works, that in the end, you can identify the person who's behind it. And it is a profile that you're working with. Thank you.
Yes, yes, obviously one of the key things, if you look at the financial services sector, that I want to be able to do is to prove that you are who you claim to be when you use your online banking. I think in the German context, what the legislation said to us was that in terms of profiling in Germany, the collection of behavior is not considered to be a risk. The other very important thing is that it's the ability to anonymize the data, as Carmela said, and that's one of the key things, especially in the cloud, that the behavior data is anonymized, so you're not actually able to tie the behavior to a specific individual if the data is breached. I go into more detail, but we have a minimum amount of time. So, but does that answer the question in some way? We can talk at the back. Yes.
Hello, Samson from University of Oslo. My question is, I think, directed to Ben from Art Plus. I mean, thanks first for making the net a bit safer. I'm just curious what your source of funding is, and I'm thinking that advertisers would come at some point with bags of money when you have bigger audience. So how are you planning to deal with that kind of situation? And have they come before, or do you have experiences where they come to you and try to negotiate where their ads could be displayed?
It is a constant danger in the whitelisting process, because the way that it works is you come with ads that meet our criteria that we developed with our users. If they meet those criteria, we do a testing process, we make it public in our forum, and then 10% of the companies on there pay in addition. Now, it's very important to understand that those 10% also have to meet the same criteria as everybody else. But you're correct in pointing out that it's dangerous. And it's for precisely that reason that we recently announced that we're going to form an independent committee. And this committee is going to be made up of people from the ads world, people from government, people from academia, people from nonprofits, who are going to determine what our criteria will be in the future. So essentially, this creates a firewall between our source. I'll just take that as applause. Thank you. So happy to talk. It's a bit complicated, but that's essentially the bit. Is we're creating a firewall between us and our monetization, very similar to what Mozilla does with the Mozilla Corporation. So.
Okay, thanks a lot. I think there was a last question. I propose, if you don't mind, that you address it offline. So I just wanted to thank our distinguished panelists. It shows the complexity that we have to tackle, how you implement in practice the legal provision that the GDPR will allow. At the same time, it shows that innovation is a very dynamic space where there is great opportunity to innovate, to provide new tools to users, to enterprises. It also offers the possibility to look at new mechanisms that will enable to implement in practice this legal framework, and also to preserve people's fundamental rights while still enabling them to have a good user experience. So thanks a lot, and let me give a round of applause to our panelists today.